Somewhere in you, there's a line that got drawn a long time ago. It was quiet. There was no announcement. Just a moment where something in you refused to go under, and it said, I am going to make something out of this. We've got 100 names for that feeling. Grit, drive, ambition, and almost none of them are the real one. So let me tell you what it actually is. Because it isn't what you've probably been handed. You know the shape of the version we all got. The call to adventure, the trials, the triumphant return, home again, holding something golden. It's on every screenwriting blog and every self-help stage, and it isn't wrong exactly. It's just not what Jung meant. Not really. Because in Jung's psychology, the hero isn't a template for how to win. The hero is a stage, something you move through, and at some point, the hero has to be laid down. Stay with me, because this is gentler and stranger than it sounds. Let's start simple. The hero isn't a person. It isn't you. It isn't a character. It isn't some better self you're supposed to become. The hero is what your own consciousness does when it first learns to stand on its own 2 feet. There was a man named Erich Neumann. He worked closely from Jung, and he traced the whole story of human consciousness through the hero myth. And what he found is that underneath, it's always the same story. In the beginning, there's no you yet, just a warm, edgeless ocean, total. That's the unconscious. And then quietly, something lifts away from it. Something says, I am. That's the hero being born. Every old story about facing a dragon is really that, a picture of the self pulling free of the deep water and daring to exist on its own terms. So that line drawn in you, the one that says, I won't be swallowed by this, I'm going to make something of my life. I want you to know that isn't just ambition. That's something ancient waking up in you, older than your name. And here's a detail I love. In the myths, the hero is almost never raised by his father. Perseus, Theseus, Moses, Arthur, the father is gone, or absent, or so far away he might as well be a god. And the child has to go find out what he's made of without him. I don't need anyone to explain that one to me. But you already know a piece of my story there, so I'll just say this. When nobody hands you the map, you either go under, or something in you stands up and starts walking anyway. Something in me stood up. I just didn't know for the longest time that it had a name. That's the hero. It's the thing that stands up in you when nobody's coming to save you. Now here's where almost everyone gets it wrong, and I did too for a long time. In the stories, the hero has to face a dragon, a serpent, some devouring thing, and behind it is what Jung called the treasure hard to attain, the gold, the beloved, the water of life, and we flattened that into something small. Fight your demons, beat the addiction, silence the doubt, defeat your inner critic. But that's not what the dragon is. Let me tell you what it actually is. The dragon is the unconscious in its hungry form. It's the pull backward, back toward that warm ocean, back toward not having to be a separate self at all. Jung linked it to the Great Mother in her terrible face. Not evil, just total. The dragon doesn't want to hurt you. The dragon wants you to come home and stop having to hold yourself up. And you know how seductive that is. You do. It's the relationship you stayed inside because disappearing into someone else's life felt easier than standing alone as yourself. It's the drink, the scroll, the long sleep. It's every quiet version of, I would rather just not be awake for this. The dragon was never out there. It's the part of you that misses the ocean. And here's what the myths never leave out. The treasure is always behind it. Never off to the side, never somewhere safer. Whatever you most need is kept in the exact place you least want to go, guarded by the exact thing you least want to meet. That's not cruelty. I've come to think it's mercy. It's design. If any of this is landing, I made you something. There's a free guide for this one, the whole hero map, the descent, and a practice for that part of your life you keep circling but never quite walk into. It's over at rebirthandalchemy.com, and you don't need to give me your email for it. There's a whole Archetype Series growing there too. Come sit with the rest of it if you'd like. Now, the hero doesn't just win, and this is where the shiny version really lies to you. Jung had a word for it, the nekyia, the descent into the underworld. the Night Sea Journey. And in the oldest tellings, the hero doesn't strike the beast down from the outside at all. He gets swallowed, Jonah in the whale, 3 days in the dark of its belly, in the heat, coming apart. Because it was never really about the fight, it was about the coming apart. I met mine in my late 30s. Everything I'd built came apart in my hands. The marriage, the identity, the whole story I'd been telling about who I was and what my life was for. The children looking up at me. And I want to be honest with you, because the spiritual words can make this sound softer than it was. It did not feel like transformation. It felt like being swallowed whole. And that's the right feeling. Nobody warns you. The descent isn't a depression to fix, and it isn't failure, even though it'll wear both of those masks while you're down there. It's the hero being taken apart, because the version of you that walked in simply can't carry what's waiting on the other side. You can't skip it. There's no story anywhere where the hero talks his way around the descent. The old alchemists knew it too. They called their first stage the negredo, the blackening, and nothing is ever transmuted that isn't first broken all the way down. So if you're in the dark right now, I mean this, you're not off the path. You're standing in the one part of it that has ever actually changed anyone. And now the thing almost nobody says about that dragon. In 1932, Jung spent an entire seminar in Zurich on Kundalini yoga, the Eastern picture in which the sacred energy sleeps coiled at the base of the spine like a serpent, and awakening is that serpent rising. And it stopped him in his tracks, because he was watching another whole tradition describe in its own symbols the exact process he'd been quietly mapping in his patient's dreams. Sit with the shape of that with me. In the West, a serpent guarding the treasure, and the hero turning his fire against it. In the East, a serpent that is the treasure, rising up through you as fire. I can only tell you what I know from the inside of my own body. When the Kundalini moved in me, it wasn't a metaphor and it wasn't gentle. It was heat, climbing, burning through every place I'd kept locked. It cleared out what it found, and the very thing I'd spent my whole life treating as the enemy, the depth, the darkness, that enormous pull downward, turned out to be the same force that was trying to lift me. So here's the grown-up reading of Facing the Dragon. It was never about getting rid of it. You don't destroy the dragon. You take its fire. Everything you've sent into exile, the anger, the wanting, the grief you decided was just too much, none of that is waste. It's your own power, handed back to you in a form you couldn't use yet. The hero's real victory was never that the beast is gone. It's that the fire is finally yours. Which brings us to the ending nobody wants to hear. Let me say it gently, because it's the tender part. Jung was very direct about the danger here. The hero is a powerful thing to carry, and the moment you start to believe you are the hero, the one who conquers, who transcends, who's done all the work, you inflate. And an inflated self isn't an awakened one. It's just something small, wearing a costume far too big for it. So in the second half of life, the whole task quietly turns around. The hero built the ego, and that was necessary, that was right. But the ego was never the destination. The self is. That larger wholeness the ego was only ever meant to serve. And so the hero, having done his real work, has to be set down. Every myth carries this too, in the part we always skip past. The hero grows old, or is betrayed, or is wounded in the heel, or sails off one day and simply doesn't come back. He isn't beaten. He's finished. He's complete. And if he refuses to be set down, he curdles into the tyrant, the one still swinging at a dragon that stopped existing years ago because he no longer knows who he'd be without a war. The first half of your life, something in you has to stand up. The second half, it gets to sit down. There's one last thing the myths absolutely insist on, and it's the reason none of this is escape. The hero comes back, down off the mountain, up out of the whale, back into the ordinary world, carrying the elixir, the gold, the thing he went down to find, not to be admired for it, to be useful with it, to place it into the hands of whoever's standing right where he was standing when the whole thing began. So mine looks like this, if you want to know. 4 children, a life rebuilt out of the broken pieces. And whatever I carried back up out of the dark, I spend on the people who are still down there. The treasure was never yours to keep. It was only ever yours to carry back out. To was,